Hello everybody, we are back with another episode of Fuel Files Phillips. In today's episode, we're going to be tackling some Q&A questions that you guys have sent us through DM or in the comments section on Instagram. We hope that you guys are being as productive as we are.
No, your mom.
And we want to say that, again, we hope everyone's staying safe and healthy throughout these times. First up, the latest updates on the 12 hours of Sebring and the 24 hours of Le Mans. The 12 hours of Sebring this year are going to be happening the week of November 11th to the 14th, meaning that from the 11th to the 14th, there's also multiple events going on. You have multiple practices, qualifying sessions, different events like Continental Street Series as well. As far as the 24 hours of Le Mans is concerned in France, they're planning on having the actual 24 hours of Le Mans happen on the week of the 13th of September, and it will end when the checkered flag falls on the 20th of September. Second question, what would my ideal first car have been? So as much as I would like to say E30, because I love E30s, I've had two of them and they're fantastic cars, daily driving them is not that much fun, especially if you have a real job and you're a real adult. It's not the best. I would rate it probably a 6.5 to 7 out of 10. But in the realm of realism, I would say that the best first car for anybody who has especially a tight budget is a BMW E46. Tight budget meaning you're willing to spend between $2,500 and $5,000. And the E46 chassis, non-M, can be found between $2,500 and $5,000, all in running condition. These cars are relatively affordable to insure, they're really great on gas, and quite frankly, when you're getting your first car, power isn't always everything. The manual gearbox on any BMW is a fantastic gearbox. They're smooth, but they also have a nice little notch in them. It definitely communicates back with you, letting you know what gear you're in. The clutch on these cars is also extremely forgiving, very easy for someone who has to learn how to drive stick and has never driven it before. Modern AC, single touch windows, some come with automatic headlights and rain sensing wipers, and you also have airbags. E30s don't have airbags, and quite frankly, I don't want a 20-something-year-old detonator going off in my face in an E36 either. The interiors tend to hold up a lot better than E36s and E30s, no cracked dashes and no melting door cards from my experience. Even the top-of-the-line non-M car, which is the ZHP 330i, is going to come with around 250 horsepower. What's important about these cars is how well they handle. When I first got my first E46 5-speed 325i, I genuinely thought it was one of the slowest cars I had ever driven, but once I finally got accustomed to the character of the car, to how it handles, and to how confidence-inspiring it was, I really fell in love with it. I began to miss it after I sold it, and I eventually ended back up in an E46. They have great space, they get great gas mileage, and like I said, they're relatively affordable cars to maintain too. And then the last question is, I have 4 spots in my garage, in my dream garage. What 4 cars are going to be taking up those spaces and why? Now, I know I haven't addressed too many questions in this session, but it's about to get very in-depth. So if you're bored, leave. If you're not, cool, get ready. Number 1, I am a diehard BMW fan. So that being said, spot number 1 is going to have to go to a BMW E30 M3 Evo 2. Now, why an Evo 2? The Evo 2 might look to the untrained eye like another boxy BMW E30 M3. But what was really neat about that car is that all the development that they used from DTM, they pretty much put into that car, along with the fact that they had a more aggressive chin spoiler that is actually very noticeable, and seals all around the hood and around the front bumper and fenders to make that car more aerodynamic is what really matters. I'm going to build the engine as close as possible to DTM specs while still maintaining reliability, and of course, some period correct classic BBS RSs. Lamborghini is the brand that really made me do what I'm doing today. Since I was a child, I've loved the Lamborghini Murcielago, and especially the first generation. But even still, that's not the car that I'm going to be putting in my second spot in my 4-car garage. Since I'm more of an older fashioned type of guy and my aesthetic is definitely something that's more retro, I really like going back into the classic designs of Bertone, Zagato, and Pininfarina. But the most important car to me the Lamborghini ever made was designed by Bertone, and it happens to be the Lamborghini Miura SV. That car, no matter what angle you look at it from, has a sense of prowess, and it's just absolutely mesmerizing to look at. The details on the car, from the headlights to the eyeshadow that was purposely put there to make it more attractive to women, is what makes that car so special to me. The fact that everything about that design was thought out well, and it just flows so perfectly. But let's not talk about the engines catching fire, because we're not talking about that right now. But that being said, spot number 2, deserves to go to the Lamborghini Miura SV. Spot number 3, I'm a 90s kid, and quite frankly, I think that 90s and 80s cars were some of the best cars to ever come out with technology and speed and just the essence of driving and being analog. The designs of the 60s and 70s were some of the most timeless and classic and beautiful lines you'll ever see, but the 80s and 90s technology was some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen. And even still today, it is awe-inspiring to know that they put stuff like that in cars. So, the F40 is obviously an icon and it's a car that everybody drools after. But if I have a 4-car garage and I put an F40 in it, I don't know. To me, if you have an F40, you need to have an F50, and then if you have an F50, you need an Enzo, and then if you need an Enzo, you need the LaFerrari, and then of course you can't have any of those without a 288 GTO. So, for that reason, I will not pick the Ferrari F40. Even though it pains me to say that, it's just not the car that I would have in a 4-car garage. However, speaking about kingpins of technology and speed, I think that the McLaren F1 for spot number 3 is a very well-deserved spot. Now here's why. The owner of a McLaren F1 LM, which is the one that I would pick, is kind of a psychopath. Now, maybe I'm self-incriminating myself, but usually if you were to go all out, full attack in a Ferrari F40, you will hit 200 miles an hour. Now, when you have an extra passenger seat, you and your passenger will be doing so. However, taking in the activity and actually participating in achieving 200 miles an hour in a Ferrari F40, you kind of have low regard for your life or safety when you are doing speed like that in a car like that. You don't really have a regard for safety of your passenger when you're doing speeds like that. In the McLaren F1, however, you have the option of doing that sort of activity with 2 passengers. And that's why the right psychopath would own a McLaren F1, hit the 200 mile an hour mark without any regard for all 3 of you. And that would be me, which is why it deserves my 3rd spot in the garage. And last but certainly not least, in my 4-car garage, that final spot in the stable would go to a Porsche. To paraphrase what the wise Action Bronson said,
if I choose the right horse, I'ma buy a white Porsche.
It'd be a Ruby Stone Red 964 Carrera RS. Following the design cues of the 90s and the 80s, which I like, to me, the 964 RS is the peak of all RSs for me. Well, that's it, guys. That's all we have time for. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're gonna be doing these Q&As bi-weekly, meaning every other week we'll go ahead and tackle some of the questions that you guys might be sending us via DM. You guys can always be in contact with us at Fuel Files on Instagram. Stay safe, wash your hands, and we'll see you next time. Oh, sick, dude. Is that a real Benetton Formula One racing shirt? Ooh, yes, it is. Dude, sick. Where'd you find it? Well, glad you asked. I got it in LA. Did I overpay for it? Yeah, I did, because I'm stupid enough. But it's worth it. Jesus.